Good morning and a warm welcome to this webinar, to this roundtable about digitized and holistic yard processes. We have a lot of things and a lot of interesting topics prepared for the next 2 hours, where we will be guiding you through this topic. My name is Manuel Augustin. I am the Global Director for our Yard Logistics practice here at Westernacher Consulting, where we are dealing with the topic of SAP Yard Logistics and yard processes since 2017, since the very first implementation project of yard logistics for an automotive OEM here in Germany. And as said, we have a lot of interesting topics, a lot of interesting topics prepared for the next 2 hours, and I am delighted to have 3 colleagues with me today who are going to present digitized and holistic yard processes to you together with me. We have Christian Valdt from our strategic customer in Sweden, from Coop Sweden, and we have 2 colleagues from SAP, Matthias Gross-Holtick from the Center of Expertise from SAP, and also my dear colleague Manuel Flubacher from SAP, who is going to guide us through the next 2 hours. So Manuel, the stage is yours. Feel free to present yourself.
Good morning, everybody, and a big warm welcome. Thank you very much, Michael, for the introduction of the whole web session. Now, what we are going to do today, we see on the next slide, so therefore, 1 click, please. We're going to have a closer look at the yard logistics implementation at Coop Sweden that is presented by Coop Sweden, and will be also having a Q&A. So go ahead, shoot your questions all the time. If you want to, you can also place them within the chat, etc. Then in the second part, we have Matthias from SAP, who will present the view of SAP on the topic of yard logistics, how it all works together with all the parts, bits and pieces and solutions that we have got, and what it brings for you. And at least it's Michael from Westernacher who tells you more about the implementation itself of yard logistics. What do you need to be aware of? What are the most important points and what has to be done prior to the implementation? So therefore, I would like to hand over to our colleague from Coop and enjoy. Thank you very much for coming.
My name is Christian Valdt, and I work at Coop Logistics in Sweden. I work with business development in the transport group. So I work with everything from IT related projects to other, well, everything where we can be more efficient and more better in that sense. The agenda, I will talk a little bit about Coop and the warehouse we have, one of them. The processes, solutions, slide about the system architecture, and also what we have found out during the project and the outlook for the future. Hold on. So what is Coop Sweden? I don't, for Swedes, it's very obvious what Coop is. Coop is the 2nd or 3rd. We are still competing about who is number 2 and 3 in the grocery sales, grocery shop in Sweden. So we sell everything that you need in your household, food, non-food, etc. We have about 800 stores around Sweden, and big and small. We have 3 terminals today in Sweden, all around in the Stockholm region. One is a dry warehouse, dry goods and non-food. The second one is the chilled warehouse, and the third one is the frozen one. Well, I'm not going into more about the company structure, but I'm part of the logistics, and we serve all the stores with the goods. We arrange the transportation, etc. And we are also the most organic. We sell the most organic food in Sweden, so almost 10% of our products are organic. In Bro, it's about what is it, 30-40 kilometers out of Stockholm. It's a small village. There we opened up a warehouse in 1970, so it's 50 years old. The size is about 126,000 square meters. A lot of buildings, and as you understand, it's very old and maybe not the most convenient warehouse today. Anyway, it's the biggest one we have. About 600 employees. Most of them are, of course, pickers. We have a quite big flow of transports, about a little less than 300 trucks and trailers per day, about 100 inbound and about 140 outbound. We also have our own train. We call it Coop Tåget, the Coop train, which goes from southern Sweden up to Stockholm with inbound goods, and on the other way around down south it takes store-picked goods to stores in southern Sweden. Everything more or less is manually, so we pick manually, pick to voice, and we use SAP EWM in the warehouse as well. And why did we then start up with SAP Yard Logistics? And why did we choose this system? Well, one of them was that we wanted to have something that was independent, even if we are using SAP today with EWM and also TM. We wanted to have something that we could use together with other systems. And one other point is, okay, maybe we're not a global company, we only exist in Sweden. One part is, of course, the language part. And as you all know, the truck drivers who arrives and drives in Sweden are the same as in all Europe. They are from many, many different countries and speak a lot of different languages compared to what we are used to. So we wanted something that could be used by the truck drivers independent of language, so to say. They could use their own language or some known language. We wanted to have a system that was integrated to the systems we have, and as ready as possible to be able to just, well, click and connect, so to say, but at least to have the same data in the different systems, and also no reason for changing, how to say, the names of the data. Freight order should be called freight order in Yard Logistics and in TM and also in EWM, for example, so everybody knows what we are talking about. Since we have 3 warehouses today, they all look very different, and we also have different processes in them. We wanted to have a yard system that could work with all of the 3 different processes. Even if we're just we'll have one yard system, so to say, we would like to have the different processes covered. And when deciding the system, we didn't know what kind of devices we should use, if we should use maybe not scales, but pagers or text messages, etc. There are different barriers to come into the yard, for example. So we wanted to have a flexible system for this purpose, since the 3 warehouses have different layouts in terms of well, the physical yard, so to say. And as you will see within a couple of minutes, we have a prerequisite for our future plans to have a yard system. So therefore, we would like to start with it as soon as possible. Another big motivation was that we have a lot of manual, what I call paper-based processes today. A lot of paper is processed, and a lot of Excel sheets. And we wanted to go from this up to real-time data, so everyone in the warehouse and also in the transportation department could see the same data at the same time. What trucks are on its way, what trucks are unloading right now, for example. We have identified well, all the different processes we have today, and what we have implemented is well, more or less all processes. We have the trucks coming, unloading and loading, and of course there is a combination of unloading and loading goods, trucks coming in with inbound goods, which is unloaded and loaded to customers. But also a lot of empties are coming back, pallets and roller cages, for example. Then we have our own train, as you see on the page, on the picture here. We have the inbound process for the trailers on the train, and also the outbound. But also, since we must have a balance in trailers, they also come up empty from Malmö in south. We also buy some products overseas, so they will come with containers from Far East, for some example, but also in Europe. And then there is two different processes. Some containers are not unloaded directly, so they are just put on the yard, so to say, and will be unloaded at a later time. And some of them are unloaded directly. Then we have the empty goods, as I said before. But what we also covered, and what was important for us, was to collect data of all trucks entering the yard. So it means also service trucks, for example, or garbage trucks. Every truck that enters the yard should be checked in and checked out, so we could have a full overview of what trucks and people are in the yard at the same time. And this is something we didn't have at all today. So this will be, or this is now a new. It's better than before. Just a brief overview of the inbound process. All drivers down in the bottom here at the 1 and 2, they are checked in via a tablet. So they will enter their name and license plate, for example, telephone number. For the inbound process, they have to wait outside the gate. And when the gate is ready for unloading, they then will be let in. They will get a text message saying that go to gate 125, for example, and the barrier will be open. The truck driver goes to the gate and starts to unload. And when he or she is ready, then the clerks at the terminal will then make a confirmation of, okay, now it's unloaded, and then he will get an SMS or text message to proceed to checkout, and then the truck will be checked out. And during the whole time, we of course will have very interesting timestamps to be able to follow up the different carriers and follow up the different suppliers to see how long time it takes, and also to be able to make improvements for the future. For the outbound process, it's almost the same. The only big difference we see is that instead we have a waiting area inside the gate for these trucks. So they will be let in directly, but they have to wait in the bottom there, waiting for the gate to be ready. When it's ready, they will receive a text message asking them to proceed to the correct gate. The truck will be loaded, and afterwards they will move to checkout, and the checkout will be there. And the same time here, and the same thing here with the follow-up. We have had in the past, we have had many discussions with our carriers regarding the loading times, since we haven't had good good ways to follow up. It will be very interesting now in the future to see, because now we will see exactly when they arrive at the gate, and also how much time they had to wait in the waiting area, and also the actual loading time. So hopefully we will see very interesting data here in the future. Oops, there. So the system architecture. We are in Coop, we are in the middle of a big system change. Everything is happening at the same time. But what we are doing is that we are implementing a new S4 in a project that we call Lime. So this will be ready in the middle of next year, mid 2023. We will also have a new TM. We will have a new EWM, but since it's not in place yet, we have the old TM, which is a legacy system today, connected to Yard Logistics via the middleware here. We have an own Coop IP. The EWM, the existing EWM and also the new Yard Logistics is installed on the same decentral stack. You could, of course, I'm not the technical expert here, but this is how it looks, and you might, of course, if you have some questions, please go ahead for later. But what I'm trying to say is that it has been very, since we are in the middle of all these changes as well, it has been very much thinking of, okay, what shall we do today, and how should it be in the future when we have the new S4 and the new TM, etc. But I think it has been taken care of quite good, at least. Innovation and implementation highlights. What we saw when implementing the Yard Logistics, we found out that there was a lot of clicking into the system to be able to send a truck to a door. Someone had to sit in front of a computer to do well, what we thought a lot of things, so to say. But what we did then together with Westernacher was to invent these buttons. So from the overview, we can assign a warehouse door for a specific truck. We can call the truck the door. We can check in the order, check out them, etc. So these buttons that are red here in the middle, we together made up, which will, well, based on the manual processes we have in the warehouse today, these are very time saving for the processes, I would say. So instead of opening all the different yard orders to send the truck to different places, now we can just click on the button to well, assign or check in, etc. What we also are implementing, but not yet in place, is a time slot portal for the carriers. The situation today in Bro warehouse is that part of the weeks or part of the days, we have a lot of queues for trucks waiting to unload specifically. And one solution for this is then in the future to have the carriers to book a time slot when they should come and unload. One other good thing with this is that we are much more than able to predict the workload in the warehouse. Today we know that we will have these trucks arriving, but we don't have any specific time for them. So all of a sudden, a lot of trucks are coming at the same time, and then it might be a lot of hours, or at least an hour where no truck is arriving. So this will help us a lot in the future to be able to, since all processes are manual, as I said, all the unloading and a lot of truck driving in the warehouse. This will help us a lot in the future to well, predict the workload, and also to have a more even flow in the warehouse. This will also apply for the outbound processes, but there is some other, we don't have the same challenge there, I would say, because there we have fixed times for the outbound, but not for the inbound today. So with this portal, the carriers will, well, at their offices, they will log into our Yard Logistics, and they will book the time slot for their specific loads. And then we of course will set up some rules, etc., for them when it's possible to book, and what time slots they could choose from. And also it's of course connected then to our capacity. In the warehouse today, we have a lot of sections. This is also due to the layouts to these old buildings. The different sections are that, for example, we only take beverage into some specific doors. We only take empties to some doors, etc., etc. And this is also reflected in the time slot booking portal. So if you are a carrier who comes with beverage, you only see the capacity in the beverage section, so to say. What I also mentioned before is that since we wanted to have a smooth and easy way of checking in, we are using the Selfcheckin app, also from Westernacher, where a truck driver, well, it's possible for him to check in by himself. There is, I think it's about 12 languages to choose from. The most common one in the truck, well, the most common truck driver languages. So when clicking on the flag, your flag, so to say, after that you get the whole check-in process in your language. So you enter the transportation number, and the transportation number could be everything from the FO to the purchase order number or some other reference number. You enter your name and your telephone number and the license plate. You also accept the guidelines we have for the warehouse in terms of, well, speed limits, and you have to have a permit to drive a forklift, for example, etc. And when everything is ready, you are checked in, and at the same time we see it in Yard Logistics. We can see that the truck is checked in, and then we are able to send him to the right gate or correct door. And the telephone number here is then, of course, the key to having the text messages. So every instruction is then sent out via text message to the driver. So he will get the message saying that proceed to gate 125 or proceed to waiting area, or whatever it should be. And this is also, yes, this is also the same application that is used for also the service trucks or garbage trucks or mail trucks. Even though they don't have a transportation number, they just enter that they are there for some other purposes. For example, collecting garbage. So then they are checked in, and they will receive a text message saying that, well, go and do whatever you want, what you're supposed to do, and then after that you can check out. So this was also one important thing for us to have, as I said before, to have all trucks in the yard also visible in the yard system. Yes. So a short summary of the project then. All the processes, both for the trucks on road, so to say, and the trailers coming on rail, are covered in the different processes we have done. We have made an integration between TM and Yard Logistics to receive the FO number or PO number, and it's working as it should. One thing what I also mentioned before was that since the Lime project is running at the same time, we have had some issues, maybe not the issues, but some challenges, because a lot of things are changed in the background in our system landscape, so to say. For example, master data, or how should we, the different, a lot of things I don't remember right now, but these are things that we have had to take care of during the project to see that, okay, we can do like this for a while, and then we have to change, or sometimes we will change first, and the S4 Lime project they have to change as well. And this complexity, together with maybe different goals in the organization, has made it a bit complicated. But nevertheless, the system is here now, and we are improving and also fine-tuning to see what can be better. And one of the things, or why it's complicated, is also related to the next page, because we are also at the same time building a new warehouse in Eskilstuna. It's a fully automated warehouse. It's right now constructed and is a very big warehouse, fully automated, as I said. It will replace the Bro warehouse, where we have implemented Yard today, and also the Västerås warehouse, with the Shield warehouse. We will go live in the beginning of 2024. The automation is delivered from SSI Schäfer, and also, so they have their system there, Vamas, who is taking care of the picking and all the, every movement of the pallets inside the warehouse. We will have EWM there as a, in a way, a bridge between Vamas and Yard, and Vamas and TM, and also Vamas and S4. And one big reason also for implementing Yard Logistics is that we need to have, it's a prerequisite for the CAT project to have a Yard Logistics system here. So why we are doing it in Bro now, in this old warehouse with a lot of manual processes. One is, of course, that we see we need to do it in Bro because we have to fine-tune the processes there as well. But also, it's a way of, a kind of proof of concept before implementing it in Eskilstuna. Because during these 2 years left before opening there, we learn the system more, and we will be able to not only fine-tune, but even more to find out the best processes for the CAT warehouse. the reason for CAT, I would just say that CAT, it's a Coop automated terminal. That's the reason for CAT, the name. But nevertheless, it will be used more automized in the CAT warehouse than we are using today. But at the same time, we will also implement Yard Logistics at the third warehouse, which is the frozen one, which will be still operating in the future, the frozen one. Yeah, I think that was my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions if you have any.
Christian, I'm getting hungry already.
Yeah, they look very good here. I think so too.
So thank you very much for your part. I mean, it's really interesting to see how this moves and develops and what the views are from your side. One question so far, and that's it's a little bit a bigger one, I would say, but what do you think what has been the most time consuming or tricky parts within the project? Meaning what other customers have to think of when they want to implement it, etc. Also, that is point one that I'd like to tackle, and then point two of that is, have you had challenges for the task yourself because you had to visualize your processes, etc., adapt them to Yard Logistics or vice versa? I'd like to hear a little bit out of that from your experience.
Yeah, I would say that two things that I think of now. One, the first thing is that we even if we knew our processes today in the manual warehouse of Bro, we could have been better in how to say, to document them, all the different variations that we have today. I think we just looked at the so-called happy flow, and then we started to implement the yard logistics instead of looking at all the different variations that we have. Because the processes, even if we categorize them in I don't know, 8-10 processes, saying that truck unloading, inbound, truck unloading, for example, that's one process. Yes, but the truth is that there are different sub-processes connected to them, because some carriers, for some reason, we have a process with them doing this, and with another carrier, the process is a little bit twisted and another way. So I think we should have, I think even if we know them together in the company, we should have been better in really putting them down and look at the existing flows and processes today to be able then to connect them in yard logistics, so to say that, okay, this process, we will not work like this, we will work like this, and then the yard logistics will help us with that. And that's one part. Another part is that what we also found out during the project was that the existing SAP TM that we have today is very modified, and things that we thought would be a standard way of work. We thought that we worked in a standardized way, but we don't. Therefore, we have had some issues with the integration, but mostly in terms of how we do today, based on the old legacy systems. It really, well, it do fit today, but it should have been easier if everything was standard from the beginning. So the new TM will be standard, I would say. That's for sure.
Okay, that is something that I can imagine, and I have to tell you here, I've been working as a freight forwarder, and before the apprenticeship, I've been working in the warehouse of a freight forwarder for like 9 months or so. So I know a little about the processes within, and if you've got the trucks arriving, there's no long time for thinking. So it's always tricky to visualize and to bring these processes to paper. And that is quite the challenge, I would say. One thing also, you mentioned time slot booking. Is that within the yard logistics, or is that almost going into the direction of logistics business network?
I'm not sure if I understood your question, but it is a part. It's partly a part of the project.
Yeah.
I mean, we see, of course, it's part of Yard Logistics, but what we also see and what we have discussed, and that's one reason for not implementing it right now, is that it's also very much connected to our supply chain organization in terms of, okay, how does the agreements look with our suppliers? How is it able to, could we just open up the different slots and say that go ahead, book?
Yeah.
It's not, we have seen that, for example, some products, for example, the Hyperfresh products, they ordered the same day as delivery comes to the store, and therefore they must always have some time slots to be able to come in, so it's not filled with other carriers or suppliers which maybe we have a 5 days of stock or 10 days of stock, and some products from Far East, we have months of stock. So therefore we must find the different we have to find a way to differ for example, the Hyperfresh from non-food from China, for example.
Quite some points. I would say we have been talking about the experience within the project. We have been talking a little bit about the here and now. Now I'd like to, and that's the last question for you, I'd like to go a little bit into the future. What do you see as the main challenges within yard logistics in general, from your point of view, from retail and CPR? And what do you see as the main challenges for logistics and supply chain itself, and really from your perspective and your experience?
Easy questions. Well, it's a good one. I think that if for us, for the first question there, I would say that the challenge for us today in Bro warehouse is that the processes that we work with today, they are very how to say, both since the warehouse itself is very old, a lot of it's not modern at all, I would say, and it's reflected also in the different gates, the different how it looks physically, and the processes we have today are in a way the best it could be for this building, and then implementing a modern IT system on top of this, it's not easy it's not really easy to how to say, combine these. I mean, SAP Yard Logistics has an idea of how it should work, but then we have some physical limitations in the warehouse saying that, okay, we cannot do like this. Okay, then we have to twist it like this, or well, make the best out of it. But at the same time, in Eskilstuna, the cut warehouse, everything is new, and we are able to design the flows, the processes, yard logistics, TM, EWM, everything from scratch. So therefore, it will be very fun and interesting to be part of that project as well.
Great. Just to give you the short background on the question is because in my field of the logistics, I see retail and CPR as the front runner a little bit of what they're doing, because the demand of the customers and the general customers is always a little bit like the experience that we all have within retail when we order stuff, when does it arrive, etc., what is the experience, and so on. So therefore, yeah, it ain't an easy question, but thank you very much for the answer, and thank you very much for all that we heard from you. It was really, really interesting.
Manuel and Christian, before we release you, there are a couple of more questions in the chat, which we should also maybe spend 2 or 3 minutes on. So Christian, I would just throw these questions into the forum. So One of the questions which has been posted was, what drives you to use the carrier portal when there's actually event management in TM? So what's the main reason why you implemented or why you wanted to implement the carrier portal and not only using event management to basically streamline your arrivals?
That was a good question. I don't know if I can answer. I don't know the event management, I would say then. How we could, maybe I don't understand the question, but maybe it's possible to work in another way. Maybe you can help me there, Michael. I don't know
Of course. So I think the biggest difference between event management and the carrier portal, yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's something in Yard Logistics or whether we will use LBN. Event management basically provides you, of course, with an updated ETA on when the truck arrives, yeah, which gives you, of course, a very, very good visibility in your supply chain. The advantage and the need for carrier portal is, however, a little bit different because with the carrier portal, you would like to streamline your arrivals. So what Christian mentioned as one of the pain points for Coop, which was that the trucks are arriving at certain times in the day. So for example, in the morning, you have a bunch of trucks arriving at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, which leads to a lot of waiting times. And EM or event management wouldn't help you here in the sense that you know that 5, 10 or 15 trucks are coming at 8 o'clock. What the carrier portal does, however, is that you are offering capacity and that you're offering a portal to the customers or to the carriers, to the suppliers, and that they can book time slots. So they are only allowed to, for example, come between 10 and 11 in the morning. And if they are coming earlier, they will not be processed. And this is something, and this is basically one of the main drivers why you would like to implement carrier portal. And then, of course, together with EM, it can be a very nice solution because you get the ETA and you get the live updates where the truck is and when it will arrive against the actual time slots which has been booked. Yeah? So this is one of the main drivers here. There's also a second question I would just quickly throw here into the rounds, which is, I understood the time slot management is done at a carrier portal. Is the self-registration process then connected to this dedicated slot only?
Yes and no. I would say that we have the different sections, so to say, that, for example, in the beverage example, I think we have 3 gates for beverage. So the carrier doesn't book a specific gate. He would just book a specific time slot, so to say. But when arriving, it could be one of the 3 different slots, depending on if there are other trucks arriving at the same time, or if one of the trucks were delayed or something happened there. So you don't book it to a specific gate, so to say. And also we have the opportunity, of course, then if for some reason all these three gates are occupied, we can of course send the truck to another gate instead, and then we have some things to do. Of course, we can unload it there as well, but it's not dedicated in that sense. If I understood the question correct.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. There's one last question, and then we have to move forward. But since we have you here, so one last question is if there is a part of I'm just trying to understand the question. So the question is if there's a check-in monitor for drivers. So if this is part of the Yard Logistics solution, or if it needs a custom developed UI. And maybe I can just quickly take this. So there is a there's a standard self-check-in application, which we are not using here in this project. We are using one of our Westernacher assets, so one of our own self-check-in applications. In terms of a check-in monitor, if this is going into the direction of having something where basically drivers can see something like a queue, for example, there are functionalities in the system to do that. Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot for all of your questions. And then Matthias and Manuel, I think we can go ahead.
Ah, you just pulled it right, Michael. It's Matthias' turn. from SAP regarding the view on SAP Yard Logistics itself. So Matthias, pick it up, please.
Thank you very much, Manuel and Michael, and also Christian. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. It's very interesting for me to see also from the customer side how Yard Logistics has been implemented. So what I would like to present to you today is the digital supply chain with SAP Yard Logistics. So I will give you a brief overview of the holistic supply chain, the different products that we have at SAP for this, but then I will go into detail on the Yard Logistics side, also with some information on how we integrate with other components such as TM and EWM, but also LBN and plant maintenance, for example. And you will see that in the functionality that I'll describe, maybe you'll see some of the functionality that has also been implemented at Coop, or I hope we see some of this. But of course, due to the limited time, I won't be able to show you the full functionality of Yard Logistics, but I just cherry-picked a few key things that I personally thought would be interesting for this round. But if you have any questions at any point in the presentation, please use the chat, and then we can pick them up after my presentation. Let me jump right in. So what is the SAP digital supply chain, or what do we see as the SAP digital supply chain? So first of all, when we talk about the digital supply chain, we always talk about our design to operate process in combination with a customer-centric supply chain. And the idea is that the design to operate process and the customer-centric supply chain will provide the backbone for a resilient business. However, our customers have needs in this area, and these are some of the needs, or some of the main needs. So they need to, or they want to have a supply chain that is agile. They want to increase their productivity, their connectivity, and their sustainability, of course. Especially in times like these, sustainability becomes more important. Every day, basically. And what we do with our design to operate process and our additional applications around it is we address these needs. So with the synchronized planning and execution, we actually want to help you synchronize all of the activities across your supply chain. So this can be your customer input, your demand, your finance information, sales, service, but also your logistics information. And by synchronizing this across the entire company, we want to provide you with an agile framework and agile process so that you can adapt quickly. To increase productivity, what we want to do is we actually want to reinvent your production and services. By integrating our intelligent assets, processes, and the Industry 4.0 best practices, we want to increase the output while also quickly adapting to shifting demands and priorities. Connectivity, of course, becomes more important every day, and what we do here is we want to redefine the trading partner collaboration via the business network. By connecting every supply, logistics, and asset management provider on a unified business network, we want to enable real-time data exchange and increase the pace of your business. And last but not least, sustainability. Of course, we need to operationalize sustainability. So by embedding ethical sourcing and sustainable manufacturing practices and priorities across your entire process, we want to help you reach your carbon footprint goals, your quality and reusability goals much faster. Now, what I want to do in the session today is I want to drill down on this. Let me just put on the laser pointer. Drill down on this deliver section and present to you the process or the products that SAP has in this area. So of course, in SAP S/4HANA, we have the core logistics, which is which enables us to manage our inventory, batches, serial numbers, deliveries, handling units, and Kanban operations. But of course, this is extended through different applications such as transportation management. So with transportation management, we're able to do the end-to-end transportation planning and operations, and we want to improve the efficiency through the automated transportation planning and multimodal execution. Through the order processing, we want to increase the reliability of order fulfillment by considering relevant inventory stock in real time, and also consider the logistics constraints or under the logistical constraints that we have. Via the logistics business network, as I mentioned, we want to provide real-time visibility and also use it or leverage our third-party logistics providers to outsource freight by leveraging spot market capacity and digital freight forwarders. So here we can not only use our own transports, but we can also use the network to outsource the transportation. In the area of warehouse management, we want to optimize labor, storage, and the fulfillment costs and provide value-added services. And for this, we have the extended warehouse management solution. And then last but not least, we have Yard Logistics, which helps us streamline the planning, execution, and settlement of our yard movements and bridges the gap between the transportation planning and execution, and also once the freight arrives inside our four walls. So anything in between we want to cover with Yard Logistics, starting from the gate through the check-in, and then adding any yard activities, and then moving it to the warehouse if there is a warehouse part of if we have a warehouse inside the yard. But of course, any of these applications we can also use, we don't have to use all of them, but based on your business needs, we can use them in a modular fashion. On this slide, what I want to do is kind of just provide you with an idea of how the architecture could look like, or how the integration looks like on this on these delivery products. So we have the SAP S/4HANA Advanced available to promise, the extended warehouse management, yard logistics, and transportation management, which we can all deploy on-premise or in the cloud or in the private cloud for you. And then in addition to this, we want to integrate the SAP Logistics Business Network, which is actually a public cloud product. So there, your carriers, your 3PLs will have access through the portal, and we want to integrate this into our on-premise solutions. And then underneath, we also have the SAP Business Technology Platform, which we can leverage to integrate IoT data. We can integrate other information flows and just make sure that we have all of the relevant data available also in our SAP on-premise solutions. On the next chapter, what I want to do is really drill down into the yard logistics. So I want to provide you with a short solution overview. As I mentioned, I picked out a few key functionalities that I'd like to present to you. And then in the end, I'll also give you a short outlook of what the roadmap looks like for yard logistics. So first of all, why should you use Yard Logistics? Well, Yard Logistics offers you the functionality to track and manage your assets in the yard. So it provides you with a visualization of the yard. It displays all of the assets and the condition of these assets inside your yard. And it also supports the integration of external device data via IoT integration and sensor integration. What we want to do is we want to reduce the manual effort and also increase the quality of the data and the visibility of the data inside your yard so that you can make data-driven decisions to lower costs and also reduce the impact of firefighting or exception handling and excess inventory. So we want to provide you with the data to not only manage your happy flow, but also be able to agilely react to changes or critical situations or congestions inside the yard. Through its centralized yard management, what we want to do is we want to integrate the yard order processing and your yard activities with the transportation planning and execution, your warehousing and production processes, so that you can manage your yard workload requirements while also reducing redundancies and focusing on actually adding or value-added activities inside your yard and supporting them through mobile applications and planning and resource allocation. As I mentioned, we want to plan and prepare the yard processing. So by planning or actually gaining more visibility of the incoming workload inside your yard and the planned activities, we're able to reduce the idle times of the resources. We can ensure that the resource allocation is done optimally and based on constraints such as, of course, availability, but also distance and so on. And overall, we want to, of course, always improve the utilization of the yard. And using mobile scenarios and comprehensive planning, we hope to reduce the workforce required. Through the integration with transportation management, extended warehouse management, LBN, and just the S4 core, what we want to achieve is an accurate and timely yard activity settlement. So we can collect and process all of the yard activities for your as a preparation for your settlement, and also integrate any kind of costing you have, either for allocating them internally, but also allocating them externally for your 3PLs through SAP as well. Of course, we can also handle internal activities inside our yard. So this we can plan and operationalize inside the yard so that you can handle them efficiently. We can process activities such as washing, inspections, or measurement activities more quickly and through a system-guided way. And we want to simplify the handling of rearrangements inside our yard logistics solution to, again, optimize the utilization of our yard. Last but not least, we want to, of course, optimize and simplify the yard processing. So one of the applications you've already seen, even though it was a Westernacher application, there's also a corresponding SAP standard application for the self-check-in. Through the self-check-in, we hope to gain a faster gate in and gate out processes. We want to improve the visibility and control inside our yard. So by giving you an idea of course, the time slots, but also whether we have delayed trucks arriving or whether we have any congestions inside our resources. We want to give you the tools and the visibility of this inside your yard. And last but not least, through the comprehensive graphical monitoring inside our yard, we want to offer you insights into all processes. And I'll show you a couple slides on the graphical monitoring later on as well. So this slide is quite packed with the functionality. As I mentioned, due to the time constraints, I won't be able to go through all of them. But what I want to do is really just cherry pick the few which might be interesting for this roundtable today and go into detail on those. But if you have questions into any of the others, we can of course take them after the session as well. So the first one that I want to focus on is actually the integration with SAP ERP, TM, EWM, plant maintenance, and also SAP LBN. So the first topic that I want to present to you today is the advanced shipping and receiving integration. If you have EWM or if you're using EWM and TM, you might already be familiar with this, because this was a feature that was, I think, delivered last year for these two products. And basically what the idea of this is to simplify the handling. So in the old world, on TM side, we had our freight order, which included all of the freight units and kind of represented our actual freight that is moved from A to B. And on EWM side, if EWM was involved, we would have a corresponding transportation unit. And the freight order and transportation unit would serve similar purposes, but contain slightly different information in some cases. And again, the transportation unit would be on EWM side and the freight order on TM side. And through the advanced shipping and receiving integration, what we've done now is that if you have TM and EWM in the same system, EWM is actually using the freight order. So we're no longer using a transportation unit here on EWM side, but all of our shipping and receiving activities are now allocated to the freight order instead. And all of the updates we would normally do for the transportation unit, we can directly do on the freight order, which of course reduces, improves the synchronization between the two, because we don't have any messages that are sent in between the two applications, but instead we do updates directly on the freight order. So we're simplifying the process as well and removing some of the constraints we had previously. And from Yard Logistics side, in the latest release, we actually also delivered this advanced shipping and receiving integration from Yard Logistics side. So what we're now doing is we're actually updating the freight order directly, and therefore we don't have any integration set up anymore between Yard Logistics and TM, because we're directly using the freight order and we're not sending any messages in between necessarily. So the benefit, of course, is also that we are able to see and process the transport-related data in one UI. Again, we have a single object now on the TM side and EWM side, which is the freight order. And on Yard Logistics side, based on this freight order, we're then creating our yard request and order and our yard TU, and any updates then are going directly to the freight order instead of through some message processing as before. So from a process perspective, not much changes. Of course, we still have, let's say in a sample process, we still create our sales order, purchase order. We then have freight units built on TM side. We combine these freight units to freight orders, which can trigger the delivery creation. Then on the ERP side, deliveries being transported or being replicated to EWM. And then once we have the freight units, we can actually do our transportation planning in TM. So we build our freight order, we have our different transportation legs. We can do the carrier attending if we want to via LBN to actually outsource the transport itself. And then once all of this is confirmed and we know the time and place and the means of transport, then we have our freight order, which is then also communicated to Yard Logistics so that we can generate our yard request and order and then do our planning on Yard Logistics side. And once all of our yard activities are done, we maybe move this transportation unit then to the EWM side. EWM does or takes care of the loading, unloading. And then again, Yard Logistics takes over the processing. And in the end, once Yard Logistics processing is finalized, we again update the freight order so that all of the different timestamps, all of the information is then available inside the freight order directly. The next functionality that I want to show you that is quite new, also in the latest release, so Yard Logistics 2021, is that we actually removed the restriction of deploying EWM and Yard Logistics in the same client. So previously, in previous versions of Yard Logistics, you could deploy it in the same system. So it could be in you could have EWM and Yard Logistics running in your S/4HANA system or on your old SCM NetWeaver system, but you could not actually run them on the same client because there was some technical limitations on the Yard Logistics side where we were reusing some of the functionality on EWM side, so we couldn't deploy it in the same client. With the newest release, this restriction has been removed, so we're now actually able to run Yard Logistics and extended warehouse management in the same client, which of course offers us new possibilities for integration and ensures that we have a tight integration between the two systems. It also, on Yard Logistics side, simplifies the integration because we're no longer using the web services between the two applications to communicate, but we're directly communicating as we're in the same client. So it simplified the setup of the system landscape. Yeah, it reduced the effort for handling or monitoring two clients, also from a technical perspective, and it introduces a seamless integration between Yard Logistics and extended warehouse management. New feature or a new integration feature that was also introduced in the latest release is the plant maintenance integration. So a lot of our customers actually use also plant maintenance for handling of repairs or maintenance on their transportation units. And what we've delivered in the latest release is actually the integration to create a work order or trigger the creation of a work order and the release of a work order from Yard Logistics directly. So what we can do is we can configure our activity types inside Yard Logistics to be plant maintenance relevant. So if we create a yard task and activate this yard task and it is plant maintenance relevant, what will happen in the background is that we're actually mapping the order type, plant, business area, work center, and equipment, so all of the information needed for plant maintenance, and we're actually triggering the work order creation automatically in the background. As soon as we confirm the yard task, so maybe we have a movement from A to B, and inside B, we actually want to start the plant maintenance process. Once we confirm this movement, we're blocking our Yard TU so that we cannot use it or move it anymore in Yard Logistics until the plant maintenance process is completed, and we're triggering the release of the work order. Now, once all of the handling or activities in plant maintenance have been executed and the work order is technically completed, we again check, okay, is this the equipment for this work order, is it relevant for Yard Logistics? Is there a TU, Yard Logistics TU assigned to it? And if so, then we're unblocking the TU and trying to activate the next yard task. So if we have already the next movement planned, this would be now activated, and we in this entire process, we actually, from Yard Logistics side, everything's happening automatically. So as soon as the TU is unblocked, we actually have the next yard task available to move it again. So from Yard Logistics perspective, there's a seamless integration now with plant maintenance, which offers you new functionality to actually integrate these two components or to leverage plant maintenance for your maintenance orders. So a typical application for this is, of course, if you do an inspection of your transportation unit, let's say you're in the automotive area, finished automotives, and you realize that there is a default or a defect on your car, on your finished car, then you might want to create a plant maintenance work order to fix this defect before shipping it out to your final customer. Next functionality that I want to talk about is also related to integration, which is the second step that I will show, or the next slide that I'll show. But on this slide, I quickly want to introduce the doc appointment scheduling in Yard Logistics. We've already heard a bit about it today. But basically, just to sum it up, what we can do with the doc appointment scheduling is we can define loading points inside our system. We can define a capacity and a working time or a working interval. So we can therefore define the timeframes and operation times, and also the available resources for these specific loading points inside our system. And we can then use these to plan our execution inside our yard to ensure that we have that we don't have any congestions in the yard, or we don't have any waiting trucks in our yard because we don't have enough resources available. And of course, we can leverage this and shift the responsibility of the appointment planning to our carriers, so that our carriers already know, okay, at the time that I was planning to arrive, there's no capacity available to handle my truck. But if I arrive 2 hours later or 2 hours earlier, then there will be sufficient capacity. So this way we can also better align with our carrier and ensure that there's smoother operations and no unnecessary delays due to limited resources available in our system. So the dock appointment scheduling you would normally use inside your yard logistics system. So if you want to provide access to your carriers, they would have to have access to your yard logistics system. But this is where the second functionality kicks in, and this is basically the dock appointment scheduling with the SAP Logistics Business Network. So as I already mentioned, the LBN is a public cloud solution, and you can actually provide access to your carriers via the carrier portal. With the integration, what we do now is if we realize or if we identify that a truck is or a yard order is relevant for time slot booking or dock appointment scheduling, we then can trigger the creation of an appointment or appointment request from Yard Logistics to the LBN. Inside LBN, this appointment request would be created, would be then available to your carrier. Your carrier could then pick based on the defined resources and the already occupied resources, an appointment that suits them best. And this information we would then, on the confirmation of this booking, we would then receive back into Yard Logistics. And then in Yard Logistics, we would have this time slot available as well. So this allows us the collaboration for the dock appointment scheduling also with external parties that generally don't have access to our Yard Logistics system, but do have access to the LBN solution. Now, shifting a bit from the integration functionalities, what I want to show you now is some of the interesting yard logistics functionalities. So the first one that I want to kick off with is, of course, the monitoring. So Yard Logistics offers monitoring via 3D yard layout. Inside the layout, as you can see here on the left side, we can actually define the Collada models to create all different types of shapes, so that you can actually really physically or like virtually represent your physical yard and also your transportation units, so that with this layout, you actually have an overview of how your current situation looks like inside your yard. Through color coding, we're actually able to quickly highlight critical situations. So in this case, for example, here, we would see that these two bins, these two red ones, are blocked. We could also, of course, do the same for transportation units in case we want to highlight that a transportation unit is blocked. We can define a specific color for this, so that if you're in the monitor or if you're in the yard layout, you actually quickly see if there are any critical situations. You can also interact with the different assets, so you can display all of the detailed information that you need, or you can jump into a transportation unit from the yard cockpit, but you can also directly create movements from the yard cockpit. So if you see that there is anything not working as expected, or if you want to do some relocation of certain transportation units, you can trigger this directly from the yard cockpit, and the yard task will be created in the background for the execution inside your yard. The next functionality that I want to highlight is the classification of transportation units. So of course we're able to handle different types of transportation units inside our yard logistics system, also different hierarchies. But what this offers in addition is actually classification. So we can say that even though the transportation unit type might be the same, so it might be a container, we might want to give this container certain or specific characteristics. So we maybe want to keep track of the color, we want to keep track of additional features of this transportation unit, such as active cooling or any kind of sensors and so on. And we can do this with the classification. So through the classification, we can then add additional characteristics and the values for these characteristics for each individual transportation unit. And the reason this is very beneficial is then if we have specific requirements, so let's say we need to have a cooled container for a specific freight, then what we can do is we can actually maintain these criteria inside our yard order, and then we can do the TU determination to see if we have any available transportation units that fulfill all this extra criteria inside our yard. And then the system will determine these, provide us with a list, and then the worker can determine the most suitable one based on location and so on, which fulfills all of the criteria that were added to the yard order. So the benefit of this is, of course, that we can increase the quality of service because we are able to use the right transportation unit for the specific goods or for specific activities. So we can add an additional value to our customer to ensure that we always use the right transportation unit for the job. The next feature that I want to quick or shortly talk to you about is the advanced yard task planning with the BRF Plus framework. Not sure if you're familiar with the business rules framework, but basically what it allows us to do is that we can configure inside the system different rule sets, which are then leveraged or which are then used during the yard task execution. So we can define different scenarios, we can define exception scenarios as well with the BRF Plus, and we can handle them step by step. So we can either create all of the yard tasks at once, or we can actually just do it based on certain events. So as soon as the first yard task is confirmed, we can check based on the outcome of this yard task what the next follow-up action will be. And to highlight what this could look like, I want to just show you a quick process. So in our process, we have a simple truck. And what we want to do is we have loaded our truck and the truck wants to leave our yard. But before the truck can do this, we need to make sure that it's not overweight. So the first movement that we have created is to a weighing station, and we actually have a new activity for weighing. And then after the weighing activity has been completed, we're validating the result of the weighing activity. In this case, the truck is overloaded. So we realize that there's too much weight on the truck. We can't let it leave our yard because that would be against the law or against the regulations. So what we do now with inside BRF Plus is we realize it's too heavy, so we create a movement task, we create an unloading task, and we create again another movement task to our weighing station. So once all of this has been completed, so we've unloaded some goods, we're then again moving it to our weighing station, and now we do again a weighing and realize, okay, now the truck is actually filled according to the limits and the thresholds defined. So now it's actually okay to leave our yard. So then we can trigger the gate out process, move it to the outbound gate, and actually check out the transportation unit. And all of this we don't need to do with a manual person actually creating all of this follow-up, but we can define the rule set in the background via the BRF Plus framework, and the BRF Plus framework will take care of creating all of the yard tasks involved. The next feature that I want to show you is the burst scheduling and optimization. And this is, again, a feature that was introduced with the latest release. And in my opinion, it's very interesting, even though I have to say I don't fully understand everything on it yet, because what we're using here, and this is the first time we use it in Yard Logistics, is we're using the HANA solver. So we're doing the burst scheduling and optimization based on the constraints and configuration options that the customer provides us. And we're using a HANA solver to actually provide us with the optimal result. So the benefit of this is, of course, that based on all of the constraints and configuration we have provided to the system can always automatically determine the best berth planning and optimization, so that we don't have any manual effort for planning, and we actually achieve always the optimal result based on the constraints we have given the system. And again, this is just the first application of the HANA solver. There are other options as well, maybe for yard optimization itself, but this is not yet delivered. So the first step is this burst scheduling and optimization, also providing you a Gantt chart so that you can then visualize the actual outcome of the scheduling. The last feature that I want to show you is actually the IoT integration or the IoT enablement inside Yard Logistics. So what we do here is we are on the standard approach would be to leverage the SAP BTP platform with the IoT integration. So all of the sensor data is sent to SAP BTP. We've created the thing model and the device model inside BTP or from Yard Logistics and replicated to BTP. And basically what happens then is then all of the sensor data will be sent from BTP to Yard Logistics. In Yard Logistics, we're then able to capture this sensor data for each of the different transportation units. And depending on what kind of sensor data it is or what kind of IoT data it is, we can control our process. So one application would be the gate automation. So we're actually identifying the license plate of the truck via camera. We then find the transportation unit for this license plate. We check whether we can do the check-in process. If the check-in is successful, we can then actually lift the barrier or lower the barrier or lift the gate so that the truck can enter, or we can deny the access based on whether the check-in is successful or not. In other scenarios, of course, also smart sensors, so we can have different types of sensors inside our transportation units. Can be an acceleration monitor, a lumen sensor, or just temperature sensor. And based on thresholds that we've defined, let's say we have a cooled container, and we don't with goods that could spoil if they are exposed to temperatures higher than, let's say, 8 degrees. If we ever reach close to this threshold, then we can trigger an alert. We can trigger follow-up activities through BRF Plus to ensure that someone takes care of this container and ensures that everything is working, so that we reduce, the amount of goods that we have to throw away or that are spoiled because we didn't react in time. So the idea is really to connect the IoT data to the operational side inside Yard Logistics and control our Yard Logistics operations automatically via the sensor data. And this is the segue for the second application for this, and actually also a new feature in the latest release, which is the geofencing for the process automation. So what we're able to do here is we're leveraging GPS data and the geofences we have defined for our yard. And based on the events that are triggered by the BTP geofencing application, we're then actually able to automatically confirm different movements. So here we have a very simple use case. We have a transportation unit that is planned to arrive at our yard. First, we have to do the check-in. Then we want to move it to the parking because maybe the door is not ready yet. And then once the door is ready, we actually want to call it off to the door. And once the activity at the door has been completed, the transportation unit should exit our yard. So we should go to the outbound checkout, to the checkout area and actually do the physical checkout. And we can automate this fully with geofencing. So basically we define different geofences, one for the yard, one for the check-in area, the checkout area, one for the parking area for the doors. And once we receive the events from the BTP that our truck has actually entered our yard, we can then say, okay, if it's entered our yard, the check-in must have been successful. So we actually do the check-in, the physical check-in in the yard. If the truck arrives at the parking area, we see that there was a yard task to move it from the inbound checkpoint to the yard to the parking area. So we're confirming this as well. And then so on, we confirm it as soon as it arrives at the door, and we again confirm it at the outbound checkpoint. And then once it exits our yard, so once we receive the exit event from the BTP that the transportation unit has left the geofence of our yard, we can then also post the checkout in Yard Logistics. So this would be fully automated yard processing simply based on the geofencing events that we receive. Looking at the time, I'll just quickly go over the deployment options, so I leave some time for questions afterwards as well. So of course we can deploy Yard Logistics as an add-on to S/4HANA, but we can also run it in a decentralized way, whether on either on a decentralized S/4HANA system or also on the old SCM server. However, this would then be the Yard Logistics 2.0 version, which doesn't include the functionality or all of the functionality that are presented today, as the new functionality is only available on the S/4HANA code line. We also offer Yard Logistics as a cloud edition, however, only currently as a private edition. So you can do it in stack or out of stack in a Yard Logistics S/4HANA cloud, but again, only private edition, not public cloud. And then last but not least, we also have the Yard Logistics embedded in SCM, similar constraints as here. So here, this would be an add-on, but again, the newest functionality is only available inside the S/4HANA code line. So I would recommend to go for any of these three with S/4HANA. Quickly talking about the roadmap, I'll give you a short overview of what the roadmap looks like for Yard Logistics. So first of all, I want to guide you to this link, so you can always check the current state of the roadmap for Yard Logistics in the Roadmap Explorer, which you can see here as well. Here you see on the left side the functionality that was delivered in Q3 2020, for example. So here you see the deliver functionality, but you also see the functionality that is planned for future releases with some information on each of them. And the current roadmap contains 3 items. So first, for the next release, the plan is to enable yard task optimization. So here we want to consider constraints from the yard order, like the planned timestamps, in the optimization for the yard task planning, to make sure that we don't have any that we handle all of the yard orders efficiently and we don't have any delays inside our processing. We also want to respect the constraints inside the yard tasks themselves, like interdependencies between different yard tasks, to ensure that we execute them in the correct sequence. And of course, we also want to respect constraints from the transportation units, like capacity limits in our planning of the yard tasks. The second big item on the roadmap is the industry-specific enhancements for the terminal processes. So I already showed you that we have the berth planning and optimization available now since the latest release. And the idea here is that we want to continue supporting this type of process, so the container shipping area, by also providing functionality or industry-specific functionality for terminal processes. So for the movement planning, the roll-on and roll-off processes, the workload management, etc. And the last point that I want to show you today from the roadmap is the plan to make Yard Logistics available in as a public cloud product as well. So here, of course, the benefit would be that you can use Yard Logistics in a public cloud environment, without too much overhead, quickly deploy it, and use it from a public cloud directly. And this is all that I would, or that I want to present today. So I would like to open up the floor for questions. If we already have some, Manuel, Michael.
Yeah, Matthias, thank you very much for your input and part. One thing that just popped up is what would be the best way to test Yard Logistics to get a better overview of the functionality and look and feel of the solution itself?
That's a very good question. Should have probably gotten to it on these slides. So basically what we do here is you can try Yard Logistics in the cloud as a private cloud application for 30 days. So here you can really get an idea of how Yard Logistics works. You can play around with it a bit. You can try to replicate your processes in Yard Logistics and just see if it's a good fit for you. So this is definitely something that I would recommend. So yeah, the link would be here down below. So following this link, you can request a free trial. And I think the current version is the 2009, so not the latest version, 2021, which was released in September, but the 2009 release with the functionality, but it also includes the BRF Plus that I presented today. So there's already quite a lot of things you can try and test to see if it fits your processes.
Great. Okay, one thing to note for all the future customers, etc. In matter of time, I'm just looking at it. I would suggest we jump next to Michael's part about implementation through a real view or real life view of Westernacher to it. Michael, you're up and ready?
I am ready to go. And just because I'm seeing that there are a couple of questions in the chat, so we are not forgetting you. We are just going to basically push these questions towards the end. Good. So thanks a lot, Christian. Thanks a lot also to Matthias, who have given you now a bit of an overview of how an actual implementation could look like, but also what SAP Yard Logistics as such offers in terms of functionalities and how it can be deployed. Now we are using the last 35 minutes to, from my perspective at least, look into the most important question. Yeah, how can we basically implement Yard Logistics, and how can we make sure that such an implementation doesn't take too much time, and that we also quickly have some benefits out of the implementation. And we from Westernacher, we have developed an approach for this, because when we are looking at implementation projects, and this is now of course with a little bit of focus into Yard Logistics, but in general you can say that as a rule of thumb or as a general assumption. We look at this basically from two angles. Yeah, so on the one side there is the classic implementation, we call this. So what is a classic implementation? It's like if you from a customer perspective are issuing, for example, a request for information or a request for proposal. So you already know your requirements, you already know your processes, you already know what you would like to have in the end of the day, so that you are basically looking out on the market to get some offers. So this would be one way, which we call here the classic implementation, which basically means that we are looking at your requirements, we are looking at what you will do from a business process perspective, and do the implementation kind of from scratch and develop whatever needs to be developed also from scratch. And the main driver for the timeline and from the duration of a project here is clearly the amount of requirements and of course the complexity of the requirements. And so this is one way, which is, let's say, the traditional way, or what we used to see on the market for quite some time. But we also saw that, especially in the area of yard logistics, there's a very, very good chance and a very, very good case for implementing yard logistics and processes as such in a quite different manner. And what we came up with, we call this time to value solution, is basically a bit of a different approach how we could implement SAP and how we can here in particular implement yard logistics. And we have created two solutions. Yeah, we call them fast solution starter and fast solution automation. And this basically is kind of a different concept, because what we are targeting here and what we have also seen with our customers is that, especially in the area of yard logistics and yard processes, there is a lot of pain. But since these are processes which are very, very much manual driven, based on Excel or paper or organizationally, there is no clear visibility with regards to, okay, what are my processes today and how is it done? And remember what Christian from Coop said, it's exactly the same here. Yeah, so you have yard processes because somehow you have to handle your trucks in warehouse or in a production facility, for example, in the chemicals area. You of course have these processes, but they are not streamlined, they are not documented, they are not organized in that way. And many things as of today happen based on Excel, based on paper, based on organization. This is why we came up and basically turned it around a little bit differently and said, okay, when you do not know your processes and when you do not really know what the target state should look like, we take you by the hand and basically walk you through the end result. And the end result are these two implementation packages, Starter and Automation. And how this looks like, we basically see here. So we are at first looking at the Starter solution. And the Starter solution is basically targeted for customers. So Coop was one example, because the implementation project was based on this fast solution Starter here. It's really targeted for processes which are, as of today, very cumbersome, because they are manual, they are Excel-based, they are paper-based, or even organizationally based. So really, someone picking up the phone, a lot of phone calls internally or also with external suppliers. You may have also a lot of communication going on with internal stakeholders, where you do a lot of phone calls and so on and so forth. So this is really basically targeted here for such processes, where in the first step, the overall aim and the overall goal is to say, okay, we are replacing these manual and organizationally driven processes with SAP Yard Logistics, with processes which are defined and which are also modeled in the system, to get rid of these cumbersome processes and have this streamlined in the system. Yeah, so this is basically the first step into such implementation, into Yard Logistics implementation. And coming back to what we have heard from Christian at Coop, this was also here the basis. So this is basically the project which we have done right now. This is, so the Starter solution here has been the basis, because this was exactly what we were looking at in the beginning. Many manual and Excel-based processes, where we said, okay, at first, let's have these processes digitized. We are not looking here into the full-fledged automation already. We are just really looking into having the processes digitized, getting people into the system, already leveraging from the first benefits, such as having everything in the system, having proper arrival planning, having visibility with regards to the processes, in order to then go into the next step. So when we are looking into this concept here, as that the key benefits definitely are that you have the arrival planning and the arrival process in the yard in the system, fully digitized with, for example, slot booking functionalities as described by Matthias. We have the possibility to leverage here check-in and check-out functionalities, which are available in Yard Logistics, in order to make sure that we are not allowing people into the site which are basically not required to be in, that we also have a clear and simple single source of truth when it comes, for example, to timestamps, because we see still a lot of customers arguing with their carriers when trucks basically arrived, which can then result into discussions around costs with regards to detention and demurrage. So this is of course also something which we would like to avoid here, and very, very important to get visibility into the overall process. Yes, and when I say visibility, really knowing, okay, when was a truck arriving, when did it go in, how long was it at the gates, how long was potentially waiting time, and also maybe potentially seeing already, okay, was there something maybe not as expected with the truck. And once you have this entire visibility, of course, in the system, then also having the possibility to then from a retrospective position, not only look at the processes, but also do some reporting. And along with that, of course, having also the live tracking and the live monitoring aspects. And last but not least, having this already integrated into your existing SAP landscape. So we have seen the integration scenarios presented by Matthias. This is already here part of the solution. So integrating SAP Yard Logistics to your existing ERP, to your existing S4, to TM or to EWM, whatever is available using standard integration. So to sum this up, it covers the entire processes which you have on the yards. Christian has also given you the example. I think in total we have implemented 8 or 10 processes as such. So really all the processes on the yard from start to end. So really from the planning over to the execution and then to also the checkout. And it also allows you to not only look at truck processes, for example, but it also allows you to look into more complex processes such as trailers or vans and whatever is handled, replacing here the manual paper-based processes with the streamlined process in yard logistics. When we look into the technical scope here, we have grouped this into 5 major areas. So the yard planning as such, as said, so doing the entire arrival planning, knowing when what is going to arrive and ideally already knowing how it's going to arrive. So understanding, okay, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I do not only receive a truck, but I receive a truck with 30 or 20 pallets, and knowing what exactly is on that truck. Then as said, doing the check-in and check-out in the system, also doing already some manual planning of the activities which are done in the yard, and then also executing them using whatever is available in the standard. And then later, basically also having the possibility to monitor this using the 3D visualization, which you have also already seen, as well as some other functionality. So to sum this up, this one here is really to get going. What we are also doing here, and this is also very important to understand, this is a full standard implementation. So it does not include anything in terms of developments or whatsoever. Of course, this can come on top. And again, providing you an example, now from the US, where we have also implemented this for a customer, for a dairy producer. We have taken the starter solution here as a basis, identified a couple of additional things which we needed to put on top, came up with a timeline, and then basically implemented this in the timeline. Talking about the timeline, this really should not take as long as discussed in the beginning. So the idea here is to come up with processes and to come up with a program which gives you, as soon and as fast as possible, real value and also benefits out of the system. Yeah? And this, of course, doesn't happen after 6, 8, 10, or 12 months, where you have to spend a lot of money in order to implement the solution. But the idea in our philosophy here is really to say, what can we do in order to implement these manual processes as fast as possible in the system, and that we can really make sure that we are seeing some tangible results as soon as possible. And the starter solution, as we have described it and as we have scoped it, is ready to be implemented and to go live basically after 10 weeks. And what you see here is a potential, or is the standard project timeline. As that, this does not include anything which comes on top. We can, of course, add certain things if we, for example, see, okay, I need SMS communication on top, or I need certain developments on top, which might require a bit of more time. Then, of course, this can also take 11, 12, or 13 weeks until we go live. But the bare package using the standard functionalities which are in scope is implemented in 10 weeks, and the 10 weeks really cover the entire project. Yeah, so you are seeing here 5 different phases. This is coming out of our own Westernacher project methodology, how we run projects with our customers. So basically, we start in the first 3 weeks with the phases define, discover, and design. So this is really where we are setting down the timeline, planning the project, doing the workshops. And the workshops, for those of you who have already done some requirements gathering and to be process workshops, it's not like us sitting down with you and listening to you and trying to understand, okay, this is how it should be done. We are coming basically with a pre-configured system, showing you what the system is capable to do, and then basically walking through a checklist and just ticking off the boxes in order to say, okay, this is already included, or here and there we might need to tweak a little bit the system. So after 3 weeks, we are going into the configuration phase, which is here called develop. So configuring the processes which we have scoped and configuring the processes which we have discussed in the first 3 weeks. And then after the 7th week of the project, basically we are going then into the deploy phase, so going into integration testing, going into user acceptance testing, doing the cutover, so that after 10 weeks we are ready to go live. And this is then followed by a 2-week hypercare phase. So to sum this up, within 3 months, you are ready from the moment you start the project to be live with the Yard Logistics solution here with the starter package. It is not everything what is in standard. It's just a limited scope again. It's not intended to do full-fledged process automation. It is really intended to replace paper-based, Excel-based processes with one central platform from where you can then potentially build up. Yeah? And how such a build-up can look like is basically then potentially, of course, the next package, which is called the automation package. And as the name already more or less might tell you, this is the next step where we would then really look into automation. Yeah? Is the starter package a prerequisite for the automation package? No, you can right away start with the automation package, but what we are seeing with most of our customers is really to say, okay, we start with the starter package and then we put the automation package on top in order to then also make sure that we have these quick results and we know the system before we are then looking into automated processes. So again, looking at what we are implementing, of course, it's again the same, let's say the same process group. So the planning, the check-in and check-out, the yard task planning, and also the execution and the monitoring. So these 5 pillars are still the same, but what we are adding here is basically the automation aspect of it. And as Matthias has presented this to you, there are a couple of functionalities available in SAP Yard Logistics Standard, which you can leverage in order to automate processes. So using, for example, business rules in order to have the system automatically determine what should happen. So to give you an example again, you are doing an inspection of a trailer, the inspection fails because we see a flat tire or the temperature is not in the right range. So basically rejecting this trailer triggers an automated exception process in the system in order to, for example, tell the truck driver to leave the yard. So this would be one of the examples which you could see here. So this package here, when we say that the starter package is more having manual processes in the system and getting things started, this one here is now really tackling the burning question of automating processes, further digitizing them, and also allowing to, for example, communicate with truck drivers on the yard using SMS communication, or also, for example, doing certain other processes as described, like inspection processes, which are now here coming in, or also further automation, such as, for example, location determination, in order to have the system telling you, for example, okay, a truck now needs to go to a parking because we are waiting, but we do not want the driver to just stand somewhere. We would like to have the system checking a suitable parking space, so that the system is looking for this, automatically assigning this parking space, and then potentially also, or ideally, sending a communication to the driver on his phone where we basically say, okay, now please go to parking 47, for example. Again, as said, the pillars are the same. We just add functionality, and when you can say, okay, in the starter package we are only using standard, but maybe just something like 50% of the system, this automation package here uses everything what is available in the standard solution in order to cover the processes. Again, it is not that we are adding here any specific developments. It's not that we are adding here anything which we from Westernacher call consulting assets. So I'm coming to this in a second. This is really 100% standard. Whatever functionality is available in the system, we are basically implementing in this package in order to not only have now the processes in the system, but to also now have them automated, so that you do not need to have clicks, but that you more look at the system from a monitoring perspective and have the system working as automated as possible. From a timeline perspective, this also shouldn't take too long. Yeah, this is again our general concept. So what we have come up with from a timeline perspective is to have this implemented in 16 weeks. Yeah, and this until we go live. In the 16 weeks, they are assuming that we are not having the starter package in place. So this would be really, we are starting from the beginning, Again, having a little bit more time in the beginning to design the processes, because when we are talking about automation, we need to have a little bit closer and deeper look into the processes. When we want to automate processes, we always have to think also about exception cases, what can go wrong, where do we need to maybe take a left turn instead of a right turn. So this is why in the beginning, the initial phases take a little bit longer when we are discussing the to-be and when we are also designing the to-be. Same applies, of course, for the development phase, because here we have to do a lot more configuration. And since we are automating processes and since the scope is bigger, of course, also the testing phases are a little bit longer. But still, this takes 4 months until we are live, until we can go live with the solution. And again, for those of you who have experience with implementation projects of SAP, you know that implementing SAP in 12 or 16 weeks until you have a go live is something you rarely find on the markets. Yeah? So this is really what our approach is. We do not want to drag you into projects which are taking, as said, a long time. The idea really is to have here quick values, quick business benefits coming out, and to also solve the pain points which you might have today from a yard perspective as fast as possible, so that you can then move on. And this, as said, so when we look at the digital supply chain as such, which Matthias has also presented, yard logistics being the bridge between TM and EWM, and being also from an entire value chain perspective, also of course not the biggest value driver of the digital supply chain, should also take a long time when we are talking about implementation projects. So this is what potential implementations could look like. And as said, so Coop Sweden, so the implementation, what we have heard in the beginning, was based on the starter package. We have also other implementation projects which are based either on the starter or on the automation project, both in Europe and also in the US. And this is one possibility to really make sure that you are getting tangible results and value out of such an implementation in a fast way. What I would also like to quickly talk you through and show you is that what we call consulting assets. So you have seen in Christian's presentation that we have presented 2 applications which we have implemented as well: the slot booking and the self-check-in application. Both of them are based on SAP technology, but they are not part of the standard functionality suite. Since we from Westernacher have built a couple of project accelerators on top, which you can basically also then add to the scope, which would potentially prolong a little bit the timeline. Yeah, so I'm not going to talk you through all of them. As said, the slot booking and the self-check-in you have already seen. One of the assets which we have here is our vehicle inspection and load securing application. So there is a standard application for inspection, for example, also available. But this one, or our application here, adds a little bit more functionality, especially when we are talking about taking pictures of a truck, when we are going around the truck, for example. So similar to when you might know you return a rental car, for example, the guys are also walking around the car, potentially highlighting new damages which might have occurred during your rent. So similar process here. So when at the check-in or at the door or at whatever place in the yard, we need to inspect a truck or a trailer or an asset, and that we can do this, follow certain checklists, and also basically taking pictures so that you can, for example, send these pictures to the carrier when you reject the trailer for loading. Yeah, and the same also for the load securing. It's a different application, but from a concept perspective, it's kind of the same. So there is in Germany, for example, at least a law which makes a shipper basically responsible to check the load securing, to make sure that the load has been secured before the truck leaves. So this is one way to document that this has been done. To just provide you some screenshots from the system, this is how it then looks like. It's Fiori-based applications which can be utilized on any mobile device. So it's not something which you have to do on a desktop PC, because obviously this doesn't make sense from a yard perspective. Yard logistics is an application which is usually used on the field, we call it, so not in an office, or not that people are looking at the screen. It's more used on mobile devices because we are executing the processes on the fly. And as I said, this can work on any mobile device, where you can basically select a truck, for example, which is waiting for inspection or load securing, and then going through a checklist, and then also taking pictures and highlighting some damages on the pictures. Another one, which I would just quickly like to present here, is the yard execution and shunting application. Again, there is also some similar application available in standard. What our application, what benefit of our application here is on top is that it comes with a slightly more simplistic and intuitive UI. Since, for example, someone who is carrying out shunting operations on the yard, he needs to look at the street and look in front of himself and not clicking through a couple of buttons. So, which is why we have implemented here and come up here with a slightly more easy solution, and which can be used then, for example, for shunting operations. And how this looks like, also to give you here a screenshot, it's very easy. It's really not providing that many information to the one who is basically doing the operation. It just really is drilled down to whatever is necessary, providing a start and a finish button so that we can also track in the system when things have been started. So when we, for example, move a trailer from A to B, and when things have been closed. Yeah. So this is one application which you can use for yard execution and shunting. Last one, coming a little bit back to the topic of monitoring and reporting. Of course, one of the biggest advantages of yard logistics, besides controlling the process, increasing the visibility, and also having processes automated so that people who are right now dealing with these processes can focus on other tasks which are more value driving, is the topic of having a lot of data in the system which you can then use for reporting. Yeah. So what you do not see today, because you have absolutely no clue about it, you will see in the future by using SAP Yard Logistics. So, for example, how long does a truck need for certain processes? If I'm assuming, okay, I can load the truck in 30 minutes, but then I see it's taking 45 minutes, then this is something which you would like to change in the future. Yeah. So there is a lot of data we can use in the system, and how this could look like in the end of the day when we go into implementation is something like this. We call this YL Insights, Yard Logistics Insights, and operational dashboards showing some OPIs and also KPIs, which allow you to also then further improve the visibility. And this is from a technical perspective based on SAP Analytics Cloud, so on latest technology, in order to do reporting, where you can then define your OPIs and KPIs as said, and then also have a drill down into this in order to then really have on one view and in one screen, have a good overview of how the overall state is, and in order to see where I potentially need to dig deep if things are going wrong. Yeah. So this was a very, very quick overview in terms of how you can implement yard logistics and what Westernacher basically offers you here also to further add value to such an implementation. And now, Manuel, it's time for questions.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Michael, for your part here. That was quite a run we had, and we are actually very, very good and very, let's say, good on time. Now, one thing, talking about the 10 to 16 weeks, etc., the implementation time, what are the prerequisites to be able to stick to this timeline?
Very good question. And to come back to Christian's presentation, which we had in the beginning, what is great help is if you have some kind of high-level understanding of your processes. Yeah, because so that especially the 10-week package, 10 weeks is not a long time if we are talking about an IT implementation project. So when we are talking about 2 or 3 days which are lost because we are waiting for a decision, this can already really influence the timeline. So it would be good when we start such a project that all the stakeholders within the company, for example, are aware what is going to happen. Everyone is onboarded, and that there is some kind of process knowledge. Yeah, we do not really need to talk about requirements and things like, yeah, but in the future I would like to have this, and in the future I would like to have that. This would be something looking at the 10-week package, which comes then later when we are talking about automation. But when we are talking about this first step, really having a good understanding of what is going on today. Yeah, because what we are sometimes still finding is we are sitting down in a workshop, and then after the third question, basically you're looking at some question marks in the faces of our customers. And this is then we come back to a mode where we say, okay, yeah, but we need the decision here and we need an internal discussion there. This is really then eating up some time. Yeah, so this is really, so how do you stick to the 10 weeks? Make sure in the beginning that, and I mean, the moment we say we do a project until we start, there are some weeks until we do that. So use these 2, 3, 4 weeks lead time, which we have before we go into the first workshops, to internally already get the people in one table, in one hopefully in one actual room, and not only a virtual room, to have clarity about what your processes are.
Good one. Then I am coming to two project-related questions, and they are. I let you answer it from the SAP perspective, as it is your show. But functionalities are different in regards to logistics business network versus yard logistics. Mm-hmm. What is covered in which application?
Mm-hmm. You shouldn't see it like LBN versus yard logistics. It's more LBN together with yard logistics. So yard logistics covers the business process and execution of these business processes from a yard perspective. So this is basically the foundation, and LBN comes on top when we are talking, for example, now purely from a yard perspective, when we are talking about, for example, slot booking and carrier collaboration. Yeah. So the functionalities which are available in yard logistics when it comes to dock appointment scheduling, they are also available in LBN. Yeah. And LBN in such a scenario would now, when we are talking about slot booking, would now basically take over the part of the slot booking and then communicate with yard logistics. So it's kind of, let's say, an add-on, or comes on top, if you would like to see it, to say it like this. When we are talking about slot booking, there are of course other functionalities as well in LBN to collaborate with carriers and suppliers. But again, it's the same also when we are looking at the TM perspective. The systems underneath, they are the basis for running the processes, and then LBN comes on top in order to do the collaboration, yeah, and then shares the functionality. So it's collaborative approach rather than one against the other approach.
That's where also the second question would have been in the area of, is about dock appointment scheduling. Is it now a process of TM, or is it the logistics, or where is it exactly?
Yeah, to even more confuse you, you could even question, isn't it a process in EWM? Yeah, so there are various things. And I would really not look at this from a system perspective. I would look at this from a business process perspective, yeah, because the slot booking, and again, coming to my statement, yeah, if you look at transportation and warehousing, what is the linkage between both of this? It's what happens on the yard, yeah. And what this topic of slot booking, for example, is such a topic, yeah, which basically links the arrival of a truck, which is planned in a transportation management system, to whatever should happen in a warehouse when we are loading or unloading. So technically speaking, the dock appointment scheduling is in yards, but again, from an LBN perspective, it's all then when we are talking about collaboration and linking everything together, it's also an LBN. Yeah?
Yes, so then we've got, looking at the time, I think a last one, and it's a longer. Is there a screen, especially on Fiori, to see every truck on yard in details? I would like to see all the expected trucks on planning, but on one screen, like an agenda, user-friendly, drag, drop, etc.
Mm-hmm. So there are various monitoring functionalities in yard logistics, which we can use here. So Matthias has shown this in his presentation. We have this 3D cockpit, yeah, which is a view, a graphical view of the state on the yard. The nice thing about this is basically it updates itself automatically. So for example, you can say you would like to have an update every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds, so that you really see what's happening. And the second thing is also that what's very nice with the visualization, that it's available to also operate on a Fiori basis, so you can have the visualization on a mobile device. So for example, on a tablet for people who are running around. So which is a very nice feature from my perspective, which also customers are using quite a lot. And the second possibility is also to work a lot with overview lists, yeah, which are also nicely customizable, where you can really just show the information which is necessary in order to then have, let's say, an overview where you see, okay, this is what is going to arrive in the next hour, potentially also seeing if I have this information somewhere available through some tracking possibilities, where, for example, also see, okay, the truck was planned for 11 o'clock, but it comes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which you could also then have visualized. So all of these things are possible and customizable in the system, either using the 3D visualization or overview lists.
Just one point, Michael, that I'd like to add to this overview list. So there's also a lot of personalization, as you already mentioned, not just customization, but personalization. So you can define your own queries inside these lists so that you can quickly switch also between different overviews as you've personalized the queries yourself. So this is then also not necessarily available for everyone, but just really your personal view where you can define your own queries depending on what is interesting to you at a given point in time.
Great. Thank you very much, Matthias. So from time perspective, I'll haven't got any more questions. If there should be, we will come back directly and personally to whomever it is who asked the question. I'd like to thank very much Christian, of course, Matthias, Michael. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I'll hand over to Michael for the last words. Thank you very much from SAP's side.
And thank you also, Manuel, for guiding us through the last 2 hours. Thanks for everyone in the thanks for everyone attending today. Thanks for all of your good questions, which definitely contributed to the discussion. Also, thanks a lot to Matthias and Christian from Coop. We really hope that you liked the session. And as said, if there's anything which you would like to ask after the session, just feel free to approach us. We will also share this with you so that you have our contact details. So, and if there's any need for further discussions around the topic of yard logistics, do not hesitate to come to us. We're always happy to discuss and take you into the holistic and digitized world of yard processes using SAP Yard Logistics. Thanks a lot. Take care and hopefully talk to you soon. Thank you.